The shared alter is something rooted in and founded on disassociation. Like, I guess the opposite of association, the opposite of definition, the opposite of codification, the opposite of, I guess, um, well, the literal and abstract, the tangible and intangible. What I'm getting at is, dissociative identity disorder and multiple personality disorder. Just multiple personality disorder is just another word for dissociative identity disorder. Its definition of I guess perception of reality is the one that is accepted. So if you had the bond between a virtual world and a real world rooted on sabotage, or rooted in too much virtual reality, you could actually end up with a war when people put up a flag collectively, demand that their perception of the world based on something like Google Maps or whatever be accepted when, say, the real world says is that those addresses don't contain government buildings because they're not there, or I guess where people might say Google Maps doesn't define, I guess, the address of a government headquarters, government through paperwork and through, I guess, evidence of their position and within government, and an official, I guess, sealed and stamped document declaring those as addresses. That qualifies as, I guess, evidence in a court of law or any court of I guess, a line of witnesses that would be able to help assure a court that beyond what Google Maps or some other mapping program might claim is the White House and the home of the presidential administration, when in fact, upon his swearing in or whatever, but I guess the paperwork he signed, but it probably exists within our Library of Congress, some kind of, I guess, official fill in the blank declaration of the current address of the White House. So what I'm getting at is if the White House were torn down and put on a different street, and Google Maps were to route you there and tell you it was the same one, people would be able to say, although it appears to be the same street and same building, no, it's been moved to a different street and it's a different building. And you think that, although you think it's the same one, and that's fine, it's a different one altogether, but it's officially the same one because the address is still the same. Post office confirms it, and hopefully there'll be a paper trail of construction, work and demolition and construction work and so on. What I'm simply saying is that the reason paper trumps digital is that it is physical, tangible evidence. It has a signature, it has a seal, stamp, you have witnesses, and we use digital to complement the process of providing evidence for paper-based government. This video is about, I guess, the bond between, I guess, the virtual world and the real world. I guess what I'm talking about is the ghost of a disassociative shared alter that is snowballing throughout history as a psychopathic phenomenon. A lot of noise in here. Basically, let's see here if I can get back to one of my notes. It's kind of let's see, like a pass baton, so to speak, like the bond between, I guess, that exists within the definition of augmented reality between the virtual world and the real world, where augmented reality would imply about 70% real world and maybe 30% virtual world, right? Where I guess mixed reality would imply. Hold on, I'm being distracted here. Say mixed reality would imply a much looser bond between the virtual world and reality, where you have 50% virtual world, 50% um, a 50% real world, where you could go so far as to have 70% virtual world and 30% real world, right? Where then you would have augmented fantasy, right? Now it's getting very loud in here, almost rude. Okay, so what I was discussing is how this bond, I guess, between the virtual world and the real world, where you would have 70% real world, 30% virtual and augmented reality, 50-50 mix, 70% virtual, 30% real, and I guess something near virtual reality. But I guess, hold on one moment. Where I guess the idea here is, how do you confirm when you have 100% reality and when you don't? How do you confirm you have 100% virtual reality and when you don't? Where does I guess, the bond here that I guess defines is what the percentages are there between 70% reality, 30% fantasy, and so on? Who is providing that unit of measure, and who defines, I guess, what integrity is in such systems where I guess trying to define what is real and what isn't is important. One moment. I'm just hearing plagiarizers in the environment. A bit of I knew that type of people. But my point is I guess is the this bond here, this I guess um, definite, those who would define, I guess, what is true and what isn't, what the percentages are here between fantasy and reality, what I guess is what the judgment of objective reality is. I guess from an existential point of view, as if existential judgment of the real world were something up to question. Normally, well, in such a system, in augmented reality or mixed reality, such things are up to question. So anyway, it is that judgment that is the bond between the virtual and the real world. So I'm getting at is that this exists as kind of a shared altar that kind of you can see kind of snowballing throughout history, where every time it's defeated, it gets small and it grows again into some kind of I guess psychopathic like behavior and characteristics. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's like, say for example, a culture of sabotage, where the bond between a virtual world and real world is one based on sabotage, a sabotage culture, right? Well, um, certainly no bond could last forever, because the greater the bond, the more it spreads apart. Where what greater sabotage in a sabotage culture than to disassociate, to stretch out I guess the distance between fantasy and reality, sabotage to sabotage their own data, right? And therefore, what you get is when the real world is subject to interpretation by third parties or virtual systems and so on, you get something like Protagoras, the famous sophist or practitioner of rhetoric, who would lie and claim to have had conversations with the gods in the forest or whatever, who told him a fable or this and that, some story or some judgment in which the audience, although they thought wasn't true or thought was incorrect, or which I guess contradicted their morals, um, they were unable to contest Protagoras, because if they protested what he said, it would protest all the wisdom that all of them were taught in Greece, and therefore they did not have the courage to challenge him, which led, of course, to the assassination of Socrates. So I guess what I'm getting at is that um, their existence throughout history as a sabotage culture or a psychopathic culture, whatever is it's not always a major factor in the defeat. A major factor in the defeat is when I guess a bond is based on some kind of conviction, something tangible, but something intellectual, logical, rational, something that can say can understand, interpret what I'm doing, add to it, and associate, I guess, with people like me on, I guess, breaking down any discrepancies there and, replacing it with the proper, existential reality based on rooted in science and falsehood, fiction. And that oftentimes it's typically morals or conviction, people you can trust, people with integrity. It can be royals. Throughout history, I guess people who would be kings or the royal party of countries, it wasn't so much that people were afraid of their magical powers, it was that they existed over time as a trustworthy people that could be counted on, people that I guess were sincere and reliable, and that is how throughout history that you ended up with nobility. That when nobility wasn't needed, it was kept as kind of a standard to always be able to turn to in time of worry. But all nations have, I guess, something like that, and I guess it's just a matter. What I'm getting at is that the bond is a matter of conviction, where it's always been, I guess, a challenge to some philosophers. Like when an existentialist perhaps is asked, if a tree fell in the forest and nobody was there, did the tree still fall in the forest? Well, I mean, only a dishonest person is going to take more than a second to answer that and tell you, well, obviously, if no one's there, the tree still fell in the forest. It goes back to when Socrates told Protagoras in a famous dialogue, he told Protagoras, I said, I don't think virtue can be taught. Protagoras said, well, I mean, I can't disagree more. That's all I teach. And as we know, it's all Socrates was intending to, I guess, lead to teaching was ethics, right? I mean, I guess it's when Socrates is telling Protagoras, I don't think virtue can be taught to you, because he thought that such a person had a conscience and such a person therefore could not distinguish fantasy from reality, could not act as, I guess, a shared altar or culture among society, because it did not understand human beings as they naturally are, as too much of a minority. Finally, the bond between Western civilization may always be the James Bond, where those of us whom I guess are provided evidence are just as capable of manufacturing evidence, or those who are just as capable of making augmented reality systems for interpreting reality are just as able. Those just as able to use them are those just as able to build them, and those best. What I'm getting at is that the bond is a bond of those who build them, can also, I guess, use them, also take them apart, reconstruct them, so on and so forth. I'm sorry, somebody's yelling in my ear. Where there's no, I guess, safer bond than one that is founded on education rather than, I guess, the belief that the supernatural, that which is outside the belief of scientific understanding, I guess, is permanent. Where I guess something like mind reading, for example, where fMRI technology has the ability to know what some of your thoughts are and put them in a computer in text format, where that which was publicly, I guess, disclosed in the mid '90s, in like popular science, and like I'm just saying is if you were to have somebody that in the 1800s, 1700s, even the early 20th century, they would tell you that's impossible, that that's beyond the abilities of human beings, it's supernatural, you know, um, and that because of that, I guess, inability to, I guess, project into the future what maybe supernatural forever and what isn't is part of it, for that bond of an education of I guess a civilization built by researchers and developers for research and developers, I guess, is one that can break or come together, depending on whether or not how many, I guess, crazy people are at our doorsteps with pitchforks, demanding we perceive things, how their mind has manufactured their society.